Wellfleet Historical Society and Museum's new exhibit for the 2020 season. We'd like to share with you, before 1620, who was here? We did some research on artifacts that were found in the museum, which were all donated by local Wellfleet people over the last 70 years. Some of these artifacts were found to be 10,000 years old, others 6,000 years old, others 2 or 3 or 4,000 years old. We have pottery shards. We have a biface projectile point. This very large pestle. This rather small clam fossil. This gouge, which was probably used to scrape out a dugout canoe or carve up a grampus whale. Fishing weight, Cape style point, and a large soapstone handle from the side of a cooking vessel or casserole dish. Visit the museum to learn more about our artifacts, or sit back and listen and watch this virtual tour of before 1620, who was here, to learn about the artifacts in the museum and a little bit more about Wampanoag culture. We look forward to seeing you and hearing your questions and meeting you in person.
This is very nice. It talks about the Wellfleet Historical Society and Museum just becoming aware of what they have in their collection and how it should be handled or exhibited or stored, and and that sort of thing, which that type of attitude is very nice to for Native people to become aware of themselves and hear about. So there's a piece of a soapstone pot. There's some clay potsherds on the other side, but they all have a corresponding number to the descriptions on the panels. Okay, and all the archaeological stuff. There's this case. We have a little piece over here called Layers of History, and the stuff on the timeline. That was mostly handled by a young man named Eric Lott, who was the archaeological consultant on this exhibit. And archaeology is never, it's not my forte. I'm a historian and culture person. I mean, the English came here. I mean, you hear all the stuff about the brave and hardy pilgrims and the stormy crossing and the religious freedom, and this is what they wanted. And they just took it. That was their intent. And that's what a lot of people don't understand, is the intent that was there. And they just, they're still doing it, because look at the situation that just occurred with Mashpee. The deed is from 1715. It says this deed dedicates Indian Neck for the exclusive use of the Wampanoag people in the area. It names 5 people specifically, stating that, quote, said land shall be for the benefit of said Indians and their heirs forever and in behalf of the rest of the Indians. And then the line here, the land chosen was in, quote, such a place as may be convenient for the Indians and least prejudicial to the English, which is kind of typical of all reservations. You put them off somewhere where. One of my favorite stories, and it's a little embarrassing, but I used a pot at one time. It was about this size, and I was doing a cooking demonstration when I worked at the plantation. And that pot, instead of being, very thin at the bottom, like the rest of the pot, it was like this thick. It was like, almost 2 inches thick. And so I'm preparing this meal, and I got the fire going under the thing, and got all the food in it, and I'm, blathering away about it. And of course, it took forever to heat up and start cooking. And people just started leaving. I had 20 people, or give or take, and got down to the last 2, and they were embarrassed to leave. So they sat there, and then by the time that pot got boiling, it was a rolling boil. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm gonna burn this stuff up. I took it off the fire and set it aside, and it boiled for 20 more minutes. And people always think that clay technology is an inferior technology to metal, which it isn't. It's a different technology, and it depends on how you use the material or the product from the material. And because all the women knew how to make pots, and there'd be a bunch of them around the household, and so if it broke, it happened. It happens now. I'm using pots at home. I'm always tightening up the handle, or a couple that don't even have handles. I'm using the pot holder and whatever, So it's the same thing with these. And
what was the purpose of the 4 points?
Decorative.
Okay.
Yeah. Sometimes you read, you see the neck of the pot where it turns in on top of the shoulder, and they say they would hang them by a rope over the fire.
Right.
That's not true. They're not built to sustain their own weight, especially if it's full of soup or stew or some kind of food. They were set up on the rocks like this. And you can see, if you look at the potsherds you see how thin they are. See, even Carrie hers are like twice as thick, which is kind of amazing. And I had a pot about this size once. It was full of water to the shoulder. Got my little fire going. Took me between 5 and 10 minutes to do that. Get a little bit of coals with my twigs and sticks, And by that time, there were bubbles forming on the top of the water. So that's how quickly. I don't know how many of these antique postcards, and I chose 4 just to do an exercise, if you will, about stereotypes. And the town seal depicts, Indians greeting the Pilgrim's Landing, which didn't happen in Wellfleet for one, and it didn't happen like that anywhere, actually. So. That's wishful thinking, I guess. And the statue of Massasoit, he's in a plains headdress and all the rest of it. Like the postcards, he's done up in this Western Plains style of dress, or a pseudo dress in this case, that isn't correct for this area. So we made my grandchildren the stars of the show here, and their dad, me and my ex-husband, and then respective generations, okay, going back. Well, this man here, Oaks Coombs, is his grandfather, so my husband's great-grandfather. So I don't know how many generations, not good at math. And then this lady is my grandmother's grandmother. So she's a generation back, I think, from Oaks Coombs there. And then there's other pictures, and never all the information's on here, of either other relatives or just to give more context than a headshot would, So you just see people doing what they would do in their life, And then there's information on the bottom. General public often doesn't realize that Wampanoag people still exist here in our old homeland. There's the assumption that we all disappeared, died out from disease or war, or were removed. We're still here. Okay, and then it talks about the 69 villages in the territory from Cape Cod and the islands to all of southeastern Mass and eastern Rhode Island. And there's area up around the Boston area that is being contested internally, shall we say, but so we'll just go with what's on here for now. That could be a while for that piece gets figured out. Yeah, there's confusion about our family lineages because a lot of times people have, a great-great-great-grandmother that was native. Like one native person married into a non-native family, and that's their perception of what Indian is, as opposed to having Indian families that may or may not have had other people marry in, which does happen. Well, we don't worry about it. We just bring the kids up as womps, and that's it. And then that's what you need to tell people.
Mhm.
You know, because they always don't know, well, you know, what percentage Wampanoag and how much blood and blah, and it's like, they don't need to know that. They just need to know that we're still Wampanoag. We don't need to dissect ourselves. And then the largest communities, Mashpee on Cape Cod, Aquina on Martha's Vineyard, and Herring Pond in South Plymouth. These are the three historic Wampanoag tribes because we live where we always have and maintain traditional forms of government and strong kinship ties. That's another thing people don't realize when they think of somebody who has an Indian person that married into their family 3 generations ago or 5 generations or whatever, right? Is that, you know, even where there's 2 tribes. There's one reason why I chose my own family, because I'm Aquina, I married Mashpee, and even among the 2 tribes, you know, I had people going, oh, you're a Blaine, which my grandmother, that was her maiden name, and the Pocknets, you know, we're related to the Blaines, and you know, and it's like, and that's a Mashpee family, right? And that's just the way it is. So, and kinship is something that's extremely important to us. You know, prior to becoming Christianized, we had a clan system, which is where you trace your bloodline through your mother, right? And that got destroyed with the whole process of Christianization. But still, you know, if you come into town and you go, oh yeah, I'm Wampanoag, I'm Mashpee, and the first thing, or it doesn't matter where you are, Aquina, Herring Pond, first thing they'll ask is, oh yeah, what family are you from? Oh, well, I'm related to so-and-so. And somebody will go, okay, all right, I know who you are. And other than that, you're in trouble. You know? It can get pretty uncomfortable for people that do that because, and it happened, you know, it's like a form of diaspora that happened that, you know, people moved away for one reason or another and don't come back for 3 or 4 or 5 generations, you know, and sometimes they've come back because they heard that, you know, Mashpee's going to build a casino and they want their cut. And that's the last person that's going to get on the roll. There's more out of people than that, you know. But I don't know if anyone has any questions, you know, and if you get questions about, oh, well, you know, she doesn't look Indian or he doesn't, you know, doesn't matter. Because we are. Skeleton of a woman who was dug up in 1953 in Wellfleet here, and was on display for 23 years in the museum before, and I don't know how it came to be noticed so that she got reinterred and the skeleton removed and all that, but that happened. And so the photos at the top, we have Russell Peters and John Peters, who were brothers, and this is from 1976, at the reinterment ceremony for the woman. And we were, you know, trying to write this so that it talked about her as a person, a human being, rather than remains, you know. Because a lot of times I think, I mean, I had a person at the plantation tell me one time, well, you're not a person, you're an Indian. So a skeleton is even less than I presently am, you know. So it's very important to humanize, you know, people and things. So that's what that talks about. And then we have the poem by Helen Purcell, who was a curator here for like 20 years, from 74 to 95, which is lovely. And then at the bottom, because I hadn't been able to read the inscription on the stone because all the images I had of it were too small. Then I got a larger one and I'm like, oh my God. You know, because it says, let's see, here lies an Indian woman, a Wampanoag, whose family and tribe gave of themselves in their land that this great nation might be born and grow. Mm-hmm. And it's not exactly how it happened. And it's statements like that just, you know, really hide history. Because the history of this area, it isn't pretty, it isn't. And people always want to gloss it over with stuff like that, or, you know, we were so willing to give everything we had and die and go away, and, you know, so this little paragraph here just addresses that whole concept. Over at Aquina, they moved the Gayhead Lighthouse 135 feet in from the edge of the cliff to prevent it from just toppling over because of the erosion. And when they picked it up and moved it, I guess there was, you know, a whole lot of strata revealed, and, you know, there's all these layers that go back to, I don't know, 5,000, 10,000, 25,000, however, 100,000 years. And in the middle of it, there's this huge, like, eruption, if I'm remembering correctly, of some anomaly, some feature that was like 1 million years old. And I'm not sure if I have the right numbers, but at the lighthouse move, they had archaeologists and geologists, and there was one guy from USGS, the United States Geological Survey, a man by the name of Byron Stone, and he developed a whole talk on that anomaly, you know, and it was very technical, but it was really cool, you know, because he understands, you know, how in the middle of all this sort of regular looking strata, you know, that there's this thing that's so much older, you know, and how it got there, and, you know, and all of that. So it's really interesting.
The Wellfleet Historical Society wishes to thank the following for making this exhibition possible. Our scholars, Linda Coombs and Eric Lott, the exhibition committee, helpers in many forms, and the grant we were awarded by the Mass Humanities and the National Endowment for the Humanities. Thank you, everybody, for all of your help.
If you get questions about, oh, well, you know, she doesn't look Indian, or he doesn't, you know, doesn't matter, because we are.